Have you ever noticed that sometimes having a little money saved feels scarier than having nothing at all? And that thinking about buying a car doesn't start with joy. It starts with a tight feeling in your chest, as if you already know something is going to go wrong even before choosing the model. Because deep down, you're not thinking about comfort or status or freedom. You're thinking about whether this is going to be the mistake that finally messes up your financial life for good. And maybe no one has ever told you this directly. But the problem isn't the car itself. It's what it represents in your head when you're already living tired, behind, worried about bills, maxed out credit cards, afraid of unexpected expenses, with a constant feeling that any wrong decision could set you back years. And that's why a lot of people buy a car with a smile on their face and spend the following years driving with guilt, avoiding looking at their bank statements, pretending everything is fine, but feeling inside that something slipped out of control. Maybe that's your case right now. Maybe you're thinking about changing cars or buying your first one, or maybe you're not even thinking about it. But every time someone talks about cars around you, there's that internal silence, that automatic comparison, that question that won't leave your head. Why can everyone else do it and I can't? Why does it feel like I work, and never reach that point without fear? And no one talks about this because the car has become a strange symbol in our lives. A symbol that mixes achievement with punishment, freedom with prison. And the worst part is that almost no one explains this in a simple way. No one sits you down and tells you the raw truth. The wrong car doesn't just squeeze you financially. It occupies your mind. It consumes your energy. It becomes one more problem for you to solve on a day that already has too many problems. And if you stop to think calmly, without spreadsheets, without complicated math, just looking at your routine, the car comes in as a promise of improvement. But for a lot of people, it turns into exactly the opposite. It becomes another reason to wake up already tired, to live afraid of the month turning over, to avoid opening the banking app. Because the car isn't just the payment, it's the insurance, it's maintenance, it's fuel. It's the fear of it breaking down. It's the fear of an accident. It's the fear of losing your job and being stuck with that debt, sitting there staring at you every day. And the heaviest part of all this is that no one says there is a type of car that doesn't make you feel this way. Not because it's perfect, but because it respects the moment of your life. It respects your mental state. It respects the fact that you're still trying to bring order to the chaos. And while that isn't clear, you keep thinking the problem is you, that you don't know how to deal with money, that you always make the wrong choices. When in reality, you're just repeating the same mistake almost everyone repeats, buying a car based on how it looks and not on how heavy it feels. At this point, a lot of people already feel attacked because it hurts to admit that such a common decision can be the root of so much anxiety. But if you're honest with yourself, you'll remember how many nights you've lost sleep thinking about money. How many times you promised yourself that next month you'd get organized, and how any bigger expense turns into a massive internal debate full of guilt and fear. And it's exactly in this scenario that choosing a car becomes a silent trap, because you're not just deciding on a means of transportation. You're deciding what your mind will be like for the next few years. Whether you'll drive calmly, or if every strange noise will sound like a threat. Whether you'll use the car as a tool or as a daily reminder that something is out of place. And maybe now you're waiting for me to talk about a specific model, a year, a brand. But if I do that now, you'll miss the most important point of all. Because before any car, there's an invisible rule that almost no one follows. And that's why so many people get screwed. This rule has nothing to do with price. It has to do with feeling, with how much this car invades your mental life, with how much it takes away or gives back your peace. And while you don't understand this, any car can turn into a problem, even one that seemed cheap, even one that everyone says is a good choice. What I want you to realize now is that the car that doesn't screw up your financial life isn't the one. That fits in the financing. It's the one that fits in your head. It's the one that doesn't make you feel behind. Pressured, guilty, it's the one that doesn't turn every unexpected event into panic. But this doesn't become clear all at once. It only starts to make sense when you understand why so many people regret it later. Even earning more, even being responsible, even trying hard. And if you stay with me until the end, this will organize itself in a simple way without magic formulas, without false promises, just clarity. That kind of clarity that lifts the weight off your shoulders and makes you think. Now I understand why I always freeze at this point. So let's continue, because now is exactly the point where a lot of people start to truly recognize themselves. That moment when you realize it's not a lack of intelligence, it's not laziness, It's accumulated exhaustion from making decisions under pressure all the time. And when your head is like that, any big choice becomes a huge emotional risk. And the car is one of the biggest emotional choices there is, even though everyone treats it as something normal, almost automatic, as if it were just comparing price and monthly payment. But behind that, there's a heavy psychological load that no one teaches you to see. Notice how most people decide to buy a car? It's not in a calm moment. It's after a hard phase, after a squeeze, after years of walking or depending on bad transportation. It's when an opportunity shows up, a small raise, approved credit, a down payment you can scrape together with sacrifice. And in that moment, the mind isn't thinking about balance. It's thinking about relief. It's thinking about finally getting out of that feeling of being behind, of embarrassment, of always being the last to arrive. And that's where the danger lives, because you're not choosing a car. You're trying to compensate for old emotional wear and tear. And when a financial decision is born from that place, it usually charges a high price later. Maybe you've already felt that initial excitement mixed with fear, that feeling of achievement that doesn't last long. And then the silent trade begins. You trade peace for status, trade predictability for a payment, trade mental freedom for a fixed commitment. And no one says that this kind of trade slowly drains your energy. Not all at once, but month after month, until you reach a point where you can't explain why you feel so financially exhausted, even doing everything right, even paying the bills, even working. And then that dangerous phrase appears in your head. It feels like money is never enough. And the cruelest part is that the car becomes the center of this tension without you noticing. Because it doesn't scream, it doesn't fail all at once. It just demands consistency. It demands that you never fail, that the month never goes wrong, that the unexpected never shows up. And life doesn't work like that. Life messes up, gets delayed, breaks, changes. And when you put a commitment that's too big on top of a routine that's already unstable, the result isn't just financial. It's mental. It's living in a state of alert. It's looking at the calendar with fear. It's feeling a knot every time your phone buzzes with a bank notification. Actually, at this point, a lot of people start blaming themselves, thinking the problem was not waiting longer, not earning more, not being more disciplined. But almost never does someone stop to think that maybe the mistake wasn't buying too early, but buying at the limit. Buying at the exact point where any variation becomes a threat. And here's where a simple truth comes in that almost no one accepts at first. The car that doesn't screw up your financial life is the one that allows mistakes. The one that allows a bad month without turning into a disaster. The one that doesn't turn a small problem into an emotional crisis. And when I say this, it's not about being overly conservative. It's not about never improving your life. It's about respecting the stage you're in right now. Because there's a huge difference between using a car to make your life easier and using a car to prove something, either to others or to yourself. And while that isn't clear, you keep thinking you need to try harder, earn more, endure more, when in reality what you need is to stop putting yourself in situations that require constant perfection. If you look closely, the people who are most financially calm aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who live with margin. They're the ones who can absorb impact without falling apart. And the right car fits exactly there, as something that integrates, not something that dominates. But no one teaches you to think this way. Everyone teaches you to think about how much you can pay per month. And almost no one teaches you to think about how much it's going to cost your peace, your sleep, your mind. And without realizing it, you keep stacking decisions that seem small on their own, but together create a heavy life. Maybe now you're starting to feel a different kind of discomfort. Not that obvious fear, but an uncomfortable clarity. That feeling that some choices you thought were normal may have been made too quickly or with the wrong emotional weight. And this isn't to create guilt, it's to create awareness. Because only when you understand the mechanism behind financial anxiety can you get out of the cycle. And in the next points, this will become even clearer, especially when we talk about the most common mistake that makes any car a problem. Even when it seems cheap, reliable, and realistic. The mistake is choosing the car looking only at today, at the payment that fits right now, at the income that exists right now, at the stability that seems to exist right now, as if your life were a straight, predictable line without stumbles, without pauses, without changes. And that's unfair to you because you don't live in a spreadsheet. You live in a real routine with fatigue, with unexpected events, with bad days, with tight months, with moments when motivation drops, and when the car is chosen at the limit. It doesn't support you. It charges you. It demands that you always be at your best moment, and that wears you down more than it seems. Notice how this shows up day to day. It's not an explosion. It's a constant drip. You start avoiding going out because you think about fuel. You start postponing maintenance because the month is tight. You start using the credit card to cover a hole that came up because of the car. You start pushing small expenses forward. And when you realize it, the car that was supposed to make your life easier has become another center of difficult decisions, another source of guilt, another invisible weight that follows you even when you're not driving. And the most dangerous part is that this happens even with cars considered good, economical, safe, because it's not the label that defines the impact. It's the proportion. It's how much this car occupies your mental space. And almost no one stops to measure that because you can't put it into numbers. You can't show it on a chart, but you feel it. You feel it when you think twice before filling up. When you hope nothing breaks, when you feel a strange relief, when the month ends and you made it through unscathed, as if you survived another round. In this scenario, a lot of people try to fix it the wrong way. They try to earn more to compensate. They try to do side hustles to sustain a heavy choice. They try to squeeze other areas of life. Cut leisure, cut rest, cut small things that gave pleasure, all to maintain a decision that deep down is already costing too much. And this creates a dangerous sense of entrapment because you start working to sustain the car instead of using the car to sustain your life. And this inversion is what screws up the financial and emotional health of a lot of people without making noise. And here a question arises that almost no one asks, but that changes everything. If this car didn't exist today, would your financial life be lighter or heavier? And this question isn't to create regret, it's to create awareness. Because the car that doesn't screw up your financial life is the one that, if you need to give it up tomorrow, doesn't leave an emotional hole, doesn't leave a feeling of failure, doesn't leave a debt that chases you. It's a tool, not an anchor. Maybe this sounds strange now, because we were taught to see the car as a definitive achievement, as a symbol of progress. But real progress isn't accumulating things. It's reducing pressure. It's gaining margin. It's being able to breathe better at the end of the month. It's not living in fear of the next unexpected event. And when you start looking from this angle, the choice of a car changes completely, because you stop asking which one can I buy, and start asking which one can I sustain without sabotaging myself. And this point is uncomfortable because it requires honesty. It requires admitting limits. It requires accepting that maybe it's not the time yet for that model, that upgrade, that leap, and that hits the ego directly. The comparison, that feeling of being behind compared to others. But here's a simple and liberating truth. No one lives with your bank account except you. No one feels your anxiety except you. No one will pay the mental price of your choices except you. When you start accepting that the problem was never a lack of desire, but excess pressure, everything shifts inside your head. Because you realize that many bad financial decisions aren't born from greed. They're born from exhaustion. That silent exhaustion of someone who's always trying to balance, always trying to keep up, always trying to look normal. And the car enters exactly there as a promise of normality, of belonging, of finally being at the same level as everyone around you. But no one warns you that this promise can cost too much when it doesn't respect your emotional stamina. It's at this point that the car starts stealing things you don't even notice right away. It steals your spontaneity because you start thinking twice before accepting an invitation. It steals your rest because your mind doesn't shut off even when you're at home. It steals your sense of progress because even paying everything on time, you feel stuck, like you're just maintaining, just surviving. And that generates huge frustration, that feeling of trying so hard just to stay in the same place. And this kind of frustration eats you from the inside. Maybe you've already felt this without being able to explain it. That constant irritation, that impatience with small things, that feeling that any extra expense becomes a bigger problem than it should. And when you look closely, it's not just that money is tight, it's that your mental margin is gone because you live at the limit. And living at the limit turns any tool into a threat, including the car, which was supposed to help, but becomes another source of tension. And here comes a point that completely changes the logic. The car that doesn't screw up your financial life is the one that lets you forget about it most of the time. The one that doesn't demand constant vigilance. The one that doesn't force you to think about money every time you turn the key. Because when the car becomes a recurring thought, it has already stopped being a solution and become a problem, even if it's paid on time, even if it's within the budget on paper. This type of car doesn't draw attention, doesn't impress, doesn't become a topic of conversation, but it gives back something far more valuable than status. It gives back mental silence, it gives back predictability, It gives back the feeling that a bad month won't destroy everything. And that's something only those who have lived through tight times truly understand, because financial peace isn't a luxury. It's a basic necessity for those who have spent too long in survival mode. When you understand this, you start to see why so many people regret not the amount, but the weight, not the price, but the pressure. And it becomes clear that choosing the right car isn't about climbing steps fast. It's about stopping yourself from slipping. It's about creating an emotional foundation where you can think better, decide better, breathe better, because good financial decisions aren't born from desperation. They're born from calm. And calm only exists when you stop putting yourself in situations that require constant effort just to avoid falling apart. If you're still here, it's because something in all of this touched a sensitive spot. Maybe you're rethinking past choices. Maybe you're avoiding making a mistake now. Maybe you're just feeling finally understood. And that matters, because the next step isn't to say which car to buy. It's to understand what kind of commitment you can carry without losing yourself. And that's something almost no one helps you see. But once you see it, you can't pretend you didn't. So now we start lifting the mystery. Because identifying the type of car that won't sabotage you has nothing to do with brand or specific model. It has to do with a very clear feeling that almost no one uses as a criterion, but that is the most honest of all. The feeling of margin, margin for error, margin to breathe, margin for peace. Because when you live without margin, anything becomes a threat. And when you live with margin, even problems get smaller. The first sign that a car respects your reality is simple and uncomfortable at the same time. It doesn't require everything to go right all the time. It doesn't depend on a perfect month. It doesn't depend on you never failing, never being late, never having an unexpected expense, because real life isn't perfect. And if the car only works in an ideal scenario, it's already wrong for your current moment, no matter how beautiful or desired it is. In practice, this means the right car is the one you can maintain, even if your income fluctuates a bit, even if something unexpected comes up, even if one month is emotionally heavier, because money and emotion go together. And when your mind is tired, your ability to compensate for mistakes decreases. So the car can't demand extra effort when you're already at your limit. It needs to fit in your worst month, not just your best. Another important sign is noticing how you feel, even before buying, if the decision comes with constant anxiety, fear of messing up, too many justifications. Internal phrases like, it'll work out, I'll figure it out later. It gets better down the road. That's not excitement. That's a warning. Because healthy decisions usually bring light, nervousness, not in your stomach. And the car that doesn't sabotage you doesn't require you to constantly convince yourself you made the right choice. There's also a criterion almost no one uses, but it's revealing. Imagining your life 6 months after the purchase. Not on delivery day, not in the first week, but on an ordinary Tuesday. In an ordinary month, with ordinary bills, how does this car show up in your routine? Does it go unnoticed, or does it become a constant reminder of obligation? Because if it shows up more as a worry than as a solution, something is off. And here comes an important shift. The right car for you today might not be the car you want, but it's the car that prepares you for the next step, because it doesn't pull you down, doesn't trap you, doesn't drain your energy, it stabilizes you. And stability isn't stagnation, it's a base. It's solid ground that allows you to grow without anxiety, and a lot of people confuse evolution with a big leap. When in reality, evolution is stopping falling into the same holes. When you start using these simple filters, feeling of margin, emotional reaction, impact on an ordinary routine, the decision becomes less glamorous, but much safer. And that doesn't make you smaller. It makes you strategic, because you stop competing with the appearance of other people's lives and start respecting your own path, with your timing, your limits, and your real priorities. So now the idea is to tie all this together in a simple way without leaving loose ends. Because if you leave here with only reflection and no sense of decision, the video becomes too heavy. And the intention was never to tire you out more. It was to relieve you, to give you a direction, to help you see more clearly where you are and what makes sense now. Not in an ideal world, but in your real life. The car that won't sabotage you is the one that, when you think about it at night, doesn't speed up your heart, doesn't force you to do mental math before sleeping, doesn't make you promise you'll figure it out if something goes wrong. It's almost emotionally invisible. It exists, does its job, and disappears from your mind. And that's a huge sign that it's in the right place in your life, because anything that's too big takes up too much space, and you already have enough worries. It's the car that doesn't demand silent sacrifices, that doesn't make you cut small joys to compensate, that doesn't become the reason you postpone simple plans, that doesn't trap you in a cycle of maintaining appearances while inside you're just trying to endure. Because when a car starts demanding constant renunciation, it stops being a tool and becomes an unfair trade. You give up peace in exchange for something that doesn't even bring that much satisfaction after the novelty wears off. And maybe the biggest clarity of all is this: the right car doesn't make you feel like you finally won. It makes you feel like you stopped losing, stopped chasing, stopped punishing yourself for not being where you think you should be. It puts you in a more human, more sustainable rhythm where you can think better, decide better, and most importantly, blame yourself less. If today you earn less than you'd like, feel behind compared to others, feel mentally exhausted, the car that makes sense right now is the one that helps you organize the mess, not the one that increases the pressure. Because growing with extra weight is much harder than growing with lightness. And almost no one talks about that. Because lightness doesn't impress, but it builds. Maybe you realize now that the problem was never which car to buy, but what phase of life am I in? And when you respect that phase, choices become easier, less painful, less loaded with fear. And that doesn't stop you from evolving. On the contrary, it creates the path so that later on, you can choose with much more security, without anxiety, without guilt, without that feeling of betting too high. If this video made sense to you, if at any moment you felt described here, do something simple now. Leave a like so this content reaches more people who are going through the same silent struggle. Subscribe to the channel because here we talk about money the way it really weighs on real life. Without fantasy, without magic formulas, and comment the word margin. Just one word. So I know you stayed until the end and that this message reached you.